Okay, thank you everyone for joining me. It's time for Handmade here. We had a relatively long question and answer session today. That's just how it goes sometimes. But we're all good now. I started the timer. I restarted the timer, so hopefully we'll still get roughly 2 hours of programming in. Anyway, here's what we're doing today. Last weekend, we finished our font importing, and so that we could have everything flow through the art pipeline. And we kind of have everything working now, but we've got, like, here's what I would say. We finished everything, but we haven't really polished anything in the system. And so there's still a lot of persnicketyness to it, and there's some things that we probably want to fine-tune, and there's stuff we want to do, right, et cetera, et cetera. So I think what we want to do now is we want to kind of, like, put ourselves in a good sort of incubating situation where we can work with the code a little bit, improve it, get to a point where we're happy with it, and so that we can clean out the cobwebs of what we've created now, having to do a bunch of work with this asset importing. And there's sort of two sides to that. One is that I think we need to improve just the handling of the assets on the game side. And so for doing that, what I want to do is just like increase the cognitive load on that part of the code now, and say, what if we want to add our ground cover that we wanted? So add a ground cover back in. Let's add furniture in the orphanage. Let's try getting the orphans correct, so which orphans are which and all that stuff. Let's put a hat on the hero, these sorts of things. And so that's going to be a pretty major push, and that'll clean up, I think, a couple parts of the asset system. One is that we can decide like how we're gonna like standardize on the different grid importing methods and stuff like this. And then another is like how the entities query which assets they're using and stuff like that. So, we can really like now that we kind of have all the pieces working together, we can really push to make it all work right and see how each decision has effects on the parts of the pipeline, so that we can actually make intelligent choices there for the final, for the final blessed version. The other thing that I think we want to do is just clean up some of the asset system code. So what I've seen with the way that we did things, and I put some to-dos in the code about this, is I really don't like the way that we do our updating right now. Because I feel like we could consolidate it. Right now we're doing a lot of individual checking. So we do an import, and then we look at all these things and say, like, did this change, did that change, right? And what I'd rather do, I think, is I'd rather do something more along the lines of, when we do a tag import, we build a completely new data block for the HHA file. For each HHA file. And then when we are done, right, so when we finish the entire import, all we do is compare the data block to the old data block. And if it's different, we rewrite it. If it's the same, we don't, right? I think that's a much cleaner way to do this, because like right now, if you look at the way the code is working, we're constantly having to manually do checks to see whether we need to update something in the HHA. And not only does that produce just a lot of code we have to maintain, but it's just error prone, right? Because it means that in addition to the code that imports things, we also have the code that diffs things, and both can fail. Whereas if we just had it, if we just did something where we put, here is the final block, this is exactly what it has to be, it's trivial for us to just run a memcomp on that and the old block to know if anything changed. And it can never be wrong, right? So that would offload a huge amount of that work onto one centralized, easy to make correct function that doesn't have to be maintained. And then that way we only ever have to focus on making sure that we import correctly, and that's it. So I think that's a much better way to go, and it's just like, because of the way the code evolved, we didn't think about that or didn't implement it that way at the head end, but there's no reason we can't kind of extract that part out and do it, because it's not that complicated, right? It's not that hard to imagine that thing. It's not like we have to rewrite all the code. We can do it pretty straight. It's more about just removing code, really, and then pushing it to the end. So that's really what we want to do here. Now, which of those things we're doing and why and when? Well, who knows, but I don't really care which order we do them in, so I'm just going to go, and I'm going to have to let it happen. I suspect we will probably focus more on the diffing part of things first, and the reason for that is because I think where we left it last week was just realizing that, if we pull in fonts, we sometimes get in weird situations where, like, we don't really even have a way to delete a font right now and stuff like that. Because deletion doesn't really work in our system at the moment. We don't have things that check to see if you never saw an asset, remove it from the HHA, right? And again, that's something that would just work if we were diffing the block, because when you imported, that one would be missing. So when you diffed with the old block, it'd be like, no, these are different, rewrite it, right? And it would still leave the data in the old thing, but that's okay. We don't care if we leave extra data in the HHAs, because everything works even if there's extra data, right? So, and then you always know that before you ship the game, you can do a rebuild, which would eliminate any extraneous data that was sitting around in there. So that would all work well, and I think it's just, yeah, that all seems like good to me. So I suspect that that's probably the first thing we should do, assuming that I'm remembering correctly that we were currently having a problem with specifically the fact that we couldn't delete, or that the fonts weren't being recognized properly or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I'm not wrong about that. So I'm going to open up Remedy here and remind myself of where we actually stopped, because I don't remember. But yeah, there was some kind of problem where the fonts, tags were not working properly or stuff like this, right? And so I think that that's a good excuse to maybe make this stuff or improve this stuff a little bit, because I'm pretty sure that that the way we've got it now, has some issues there. All right, so let me go ahead and open up the Handmade Hero project. I also want to open up for the moment there's the tags file. The tags that are in question here. So we've got two tags files. There's Liberation Mono. This one was working just fine. But then we also had Sego, and if I remember correctly, this one wasn't. So, they're both the same, effectively. They both have the 106 test glyph set that we specified. They're largely the same. One has slightly different values here, but otherwise they're the same, right? And so, there's different pings in one than the other, obviously, but otherwise, no real difference between these two. And then if I go over to the HHT file, if I load the HHT file out of the tags file for the base game, which is where this is, you can see that we have a pound include for each of these. And in one case, we're pound including Sego UI.hht. In another case, we're pound including Liberation Mono.hht. If I remember correctly, Liberation Mono.hht works just fine. Font Sego.hht did not work fine. And we didn't really have any explanation for this, right? There was nothing, we don't know why that didn't work. And so we kind of have to figure out, what did we screw up here? So let's go down that road a little bit. And in so doing, if we feel like the need, we maybe will start on some of that cleanup that I was talking about as well. All right. So the first thing I'd like to do is I want to kind of see, what was happening in the code here. I'm assuming that we do go down this font Sego.hht path, because if I look at the Handmade source directory here, tags directory rather, what we see is that in the fonts directory, there is, this file does exist, right? Sego UI.hht. So the fact that we're not getting anything here, I don't really understand why that would be the case. So I kind of want to step through and find out why. Obviously, we know that there's, when we go in here to the watch window, I'm assuming that the font ID just comes back as 0, right? Well, no, that's odd. Oh, well, you know what? This is not debug mode, though. So we don't really know to what extent those inspections would be accurate. So let me just go ahead and do debug builds, and then we should be able to see more explicitly what is happening. So if I run this here, we should be able to see what's going on. Inside get font info, it looks like when we pull the asset out, I don't actually know what the ID is here, but I'm guessing it's 0. Yeah. So the problem that we get is exactly the problem that we expected to get, which is to say that when we call get best match asset, it cannot find the font. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start right in there. And I want to verify that the problem is that there are no fonts or something similar, right? So here's us trying to get this asset, and you can see that it basically says there's no assets that are labeled as being a font, right? So the code that we used to do that was itself busted. If I go into the import place, the import code, and we search for where the font asset type is being specified. Let me see here. Here it is. This is the location where the asset HHA type is specified, right here. And if we look, I mean, one of the things you could see about this too is it's really indirect, right? If I go to update single asset metadata right here and take a look at it, what you can see is there's this kind of roundabout method that this is going through as well, where the tags type ID has to have that in it. And that import grid tags part of things is, I think, the extra tags part. That's getting set here, right? So we've got two separate places that are setting these sorts of data. This one's setting the data to say this is a font as far as the type is concerned. This is the category. It's a font. Again, not thrilled with how any of that stuff's working. There's like multiple ways that's getting... So you can see why just like spending some time to clean this up, I feel like it'd be worth it. Anyway, assuming both of those things are set properly, this comes in here, should set the asset type at this time. Question is that tag actually added here or not? Because I don't even know the answer to that question. So let me go ahead and jump to end tags and see. So it looks like it is, which means that this extra tags should actually now contain the tag for the font, which means that when it's actually written out, at least in theory, the font should get the tags that it's supposed to have for that type. So if I go back and look at that, we do a tag count here to see whether the tags differ. Again, this is code that I would prefer not to have had. Right, I would like the code to be cleaner than that, certainly. And this is why I want to do kind of bulk testing, so we know this sort of thing isn't a problem. But anyway, when we do a thing to see if the tags differ, then we run through and we actually like combine all of these tags. You can see us combining the first tag set comes from this, right? The second tag set comes from this. So when we do that, we, in theory, would just append these. It looks pretty reasonable to me. I don't see anything particularly weird, right? And then we just end up with the combined tag set. I don't really know what we pass asset none there. Well, I kind of do. I guess we pass asset none there because we don't really want this thing to add the tag again. We've already put in the type tag, right? So then we end up in here and we're like, all right, we'll store these tags out. Off we go. Everything should get saved and then we're done, right? So I'll be honest, I don't really see why that wouldn't have worked. I suppose it could be that there was some kind of a diff that occurred and the diff didn't end up working. That's certainly possible. What I would like to do is check, because since we have the ability to see what's going on in our data files, let's just do that. If I use HHA edit, what you can see is there's a dump here, right? So I can do HHA edit dump basegame.hha, and I can pipe that to basegame.text. If I then do the tab view of that, here's what I get. Looking at it, if I just open up the assets, you can kind of see that, like, all right, the first thing that's packed is the font. These are all the bitmaps. They don't have any types because they're just looked up by name later, right? By index later. So after all of this stuff is ingested, we should see the font itself. What's really interesting is I don't actually see the font at all, right? Right? Like, I don't see the font there. So I think that's, excuse me, that just indicates a problem further up the stream. It seems like what's going on here is this, either this failed, right? So we never entered in here. But if that happened, we should have probably, it would have failed out entirely, I think. But maybe that's not true because this is a pound include, right? So it could be that we failed out in here. This is one, excuse me, sort of not particularly great aspect is that we can't really view the errors if we never launch the game, right? Like, I don't have a good way of launching the errors here. So it kind of would have been nice to be able to see errors that were happening in the actual dump, like maybe embedded in the file or something like that, which we sort of have per asset, but not as a more global thing, right? So I wonder if we should add to our HHA just a thing that's like, here's the last error dump. That might be a nice thing. But for now, let's just assume, hey, something happened bad here. What happened exactly? In terms of writing the asset data, we don't really know what happened here. When we did update single asset metadata, I mean, I don't think we really couldn't get through here without reserving an asset. So it sure seems anyway, because these are contiguous, just looking at these, right? There's not like an empty space either. So it just seems to me like this must have failed and we just didn't know. So like there's a parse error like in this file or something, right? And we just don't know about it or something like that. And I'm not sure what that error would be, but that seems like the case. So I'm just going to step into it and see if I can figure out what that is. And again, like normally we can see errors in the little log window, but since we can't, the debug font's the one thing that can't fail, because if the debug font fails to pack, we can't see the error because it's in that window, right? Which is why I was saying maybe we need a backup way, because there is one thing that can fail that we can't print out the errors for. If I break on parse font block, I want to look and see what actually happens here in terms of errors. If we go through and parse stuff, let's see. That was a little bit weird. What was the first thing we parsed there? I'm going to start that again. I didn't see what that actually parsed. Let's double check as we go too. Did we get the right glyph count and everything? Yep, 106. So we're going to get a token here. Let's just see what it is. It's tags. So it should get parsed in here, right? That should eat it up. Then we get our next token. We get a sender height. That should eat just fine. To sender height, external letting. And then we should see glyphs, right? All looks good. So those glyphs look like they're parsing just fine. We can set a breakpoint on the horizontal advanced table. Make sure that all works okay. Looks like it's working okay. And then we'll jump down here. Here's our parsing. And so we did fail, right? Like the parsing did fail. And the question is, why did the parsing fail? So let's take a look at the tokenizer's error stream here and just see what was the problem. I don't know if we can jump right to this, but we'll try. Here's the last thing. Yeah, unfortunately, it's just like, just going to be like a pretty basic error. Let's see what the contents are here. Tags, font. How can I see the rest of this? So go There's a dash. Oh, okay. Interesting. So if we go, we're going to find a negative, and it looks like we did not support that. So if I search for negative, first of all, those values are complete garbage. So we've got some kind of like a bad like overflow printout problem, which we can go debug. But negative kerns, well, they're not really legal in our system, to be honest, because that would mean you're going backwards, which you can't really do. Negative kerns would be fine if we were talking about the difference between the character width and how much to kern. Then you would have negatives all the time, but in this case you shouldn't really. So I don't know what's causing that, but that is bad, right? So what I'd like to do there is go into just to figure out what's happening with our HHT font, like our HHT font. Why can I not? There it is, HH font. Sorry. Our HH font program is totally crapping out on trying to produce some floating point printout of these things. We don't know whether the actual value it's computing is wrong or whether the thing that does the printing is wrong. Now that I think about it, HHT or HH font just uses the C runtime library, so the chances the printout's wrong are like 0 because we didn't write it. It's something that's had tons of testing. It's probably not that. So that means we're actually filling out this table incorrectly somehow. So we need to go figure out why we're filling out the table incorrectly. So it's this horizontal advanced table is just wrong. So how is that the case? If we look at how it's being filled out currently, what we could do is just search in the file in general for where horizontal advance is being updated. So you can see here we allocate a square glyph count of floats, right? And then we set the entire thing to 0. So in theory, everything should be a 0 at the outset. And then we add in here information from these pairs that we get back. And I guess what I don't really know is whether those values can come back as some kind of special I don't know thing. Like it could be that those are coming back as -1s or something. I'm going to search real quickly in Windows to make sure there isn't anything special we need to know there. But the real thing I want to do is step in there and see what they are. But I want to see if is there anything in particular that I should know about in terms of what gets returned here. So this says, hey, we need this many of those things. That's what we expect to be doing. The kerning pair comes back as whatever that is. There's a first, a second, and an amount. So if the value is negative, is there something we're doing that would cause that to not cast properly? I don't think so, because we're taking, this is an integer, we're casting it directly to a float, so it's not like it's going through some unsigned value or some weird thing that might munge it. Plus, we were seeing the negative, so that happened. So I'm not really sure what's going on there. So I'm going to step in here because I really can't see what would be happening there that would be odd. And then when we get down here and we sort of go through this process, we add the kerning change. So I suppose one other thing that could be true is it could be that the kerning change is wrong. What I don't really know is why did we structure the if this way? Did we mess this up? Because if you look at what's happening here, it's like we're going to add the character advance minus the kerning change. But then we're just going to add... Oh, it's a different place. Never mind. It's a different place. That all makes sense. We add the kerning change in here. If the kerning change was wrong, that's another way we could corrupt it. So maybe we should check that out too. The scale ratio is going to be applied to everything. So if that was wrong, everything would be wrong, not just some of the kerning values. So let's take a look at what the kerning change is there. Here's how that's computed, right? So what's happening there? Inside kerning change, we have pre-step X and min X. I wonder if what happened is when we use... Well, I guess we're not using any scaling, though, so that shouldn't be a problem. But anyway, let's just think it through. So if we look at min X and pre-step, where are those discussed? So pre-step is an int, and min X is so I kind of feel like this is one of those things where this happened. When we're doing this subtraction in integer land is going to happen in unsigned integer land, because integral promotion will probably turn these into unsigned ints. So this is an int and this is an unsigned int. I bet this is a problem of things getting promoted to from int to unsigned int. So I think what we want to do instead maybe is this. Let's just do this in float because we want a float result anyway. So rather than doing these things in unsigned integer space, when we compute them, let's just compute everything in the target space so the unsigned int, regular int problem won't rear its ugly head. That's my vote. I'm gonna see. There's another issue with this I'm not 100% sure about. Pre-stepping X, I don't know if that needs to be scaled differently. It may be that this value is wrong in the scaling case because the min X versus the pre-step X. I don't think so, though. So anyway, we'll give it a shot. All right. And now we can run our HH font program again. The HH font program was being run on something I don't remember what it was. It's Sago UI what? Sago UI regular at what font size? Was it 20? I want to say. Anyway, let's give it a shot. I'm going to go into base game. Fonts. There's all of our fonts. So we're going to go ahead and dump this out. And if I look actually also at Sago UI, if I look at this, it's Sago UI regular, and it's, I guess it was 20 high, right? Because 1 plus 19 is 20. So if I ask for a 20 high font for Sago UI regular, here's the HH font. I'm going to say that that's, like, I don't actually know where this was, but it's probably like Windows Fonts Sago UI. Right? So we're loading that. It's Sago UI regular. Right? And then we want 20. The carrier set is test. The destination HHT is going to be W handmade tags Sago fonts Sago UI. And the dest PNG dir is going to be where I am right now. So handmade sources, base game, fonts. And then I'm just to let that go. Now in theory, that means now this, if I revert this buffer, I don't know if I can actually do that. Maybe I can't. So we'll kill the buffer and load anew. So now we shouldn't see those negatives down there, I don't think, because we fixed the place where they were getting computed it correctly. And so that all looks much nicer now, right? You can see that it... So I think that was just a case of, like, doing it in the wrong space. We were doing it unsigned, and we needed to not convert a signed value to an unsigned value for that computation for obvious reasons. All right, so then if I want to put the tags in here, just to say that it's a debug font, that should get me into happy land, I think. Let's see if that's true. So here we are in parse font block. Yeah, and now we can properly parse it. So I think we're good to go now. Hopefully anyway. I don't actually know if that's true, but yeah, okay. So we found the font that time, right? So that's good. All right, so yeah, now that frees us up. We don't have to do what I said we are going to do then. We don't have to start working on cleaning that part of the code up because it looks like it wasn't an update problem. It was just a case of our HH font program being busted. But now if I go ahead and run, we should have a fully running system here. And I think this was in response to a question is when we originally did this. It was to ask how to do those ligatures. And that's how you do those ligatures, right? Now, looking at our fonts, it looks like our fonts are not anti-aliasing properly, would be the other thing I would say. And there's just some issues you can see with them. Like, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just to show you what I'm talking about. Hopefully this works on the stream. Actually, I can look on the other window here and see. If I turn the magnifier on and I try to move around the screen, zoom in there. So what you can kind of see is like the alpha blending on those is just not very good, right? And part of that is they're still going through the path of depth of doing depth peels and alpha sorting and stuff like that. So I guess there is a little bit of weirdness happening there. But just in terms of looking at them, it just looks a little odd to me. It might be that it's just too small, but just, you know, like that doesn't seem... It seems like the kerning is maybe just too tight as well. It's really hard to say. I'm not sure I can really put my finger on it, but it just looks a little busted. And... I guess one problem is I don't know if this thing does... Can I make this thing not filter? This thing might filter for all I know, too. That. Okay, with that off... Alright. So it's really hard to say, but it looks like the font kerning is off sometimes. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but it just looks a little off. Like maybe it's just a little too tight. Like we're removing something from the font that we shouldn't be, or something like that. The other thing I would say is we're doing currently, I don't know to what extent we're doing, when we're doing linear alpha blending on these, I don't know to what extent we're properly doing like perceptive alpha on the edges here, but we may need to tweak the alpha blending if we really wanted small fonts to look correct as well. But suffice to say, that's sort of all stuff for a different time, whether we ever even care at all. Looking at it in here, you can tell regardless that, you know, obviously the font stuff is working properly now in terms of loading and selecting and being the right bitmaps, and we even got ligatures working just fine in there, right? So that all seems good. I want to undo that change now, of course, because I don't want a proportionally spaced font for my debug display, right? That is not what I want at all. So I'm going to go ahead and kill this buffer, and I'm going to go back to the base game, and I'm going to swap which one of those I'm doing there. And then I'm just going to save that and rerun. And I don't actually know, because like I said, it doesn't remove font, so I'm not sure about that. But yeah, it looks like it picked the new font just fine, right? And that allows us to still have our properly, because remember, we were using the fixed width of the font to make sure this stuff lined up properly, right? And all that sort of thing. All right. So we probably want to stop the music test as well here. Well, I don't know. Maybe we don't. But for the moment, I think we probably want to stop the music test. I don't really want that playing all the time. It's going to drive me nuts. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that guy down. So that's this code right here. I'm just going to take that and if that out. We can if it back in if we need to test the music some more. But for now, not so much. And now we can start to look at some other aspects of things, right? So here's some stuff that what I was trying to say. Like the first thing that I think we want to look at is just some basic tag stuff. So if I look at what's going on in the game here, you know, and the dude's like walking around or whatever, there's two main things I want to do right off the bat, and then a third one that we want to get to eventually. So, all right, I don't know why this room is stone when this is an outside room. Does someone want to tell me what's going on there? I thought this room was supposed to be like the garden or something. Why is it a stone floor? Does anyone know? Did we set that to a stone floor for some unknown reason? Because we still have the grass in here, right? Like, am I wrong about that? All right, so we have another bug here. Our stone floor is our grass floor is not working, right? We have stone only. This should be grass here, right? Some of these rooms were supposed to be stone floor, I think, like these, but the other one's supposed to be grass. So we've got some tag problem that's happening in the base game. So that's the first thing I want to find out because I don't know what's going on with that. So here's our blocks that are defined here. We've got a forest block. So here's the stone block, right? And here's the grass block. And for some reason, it looks like we're not ever picking that grass block, right? I mean, that's what it looks like to me. So the Black Forest 01 bitmap is never selected, and I don't really know why. So let's take a look at where that's actually happening. Inside, I think it's inside the room gen code when we want to do like grass. You can see here that we do expect like, are we outdoors or not? This is working properly as far as we can tell. This is not. So the grass tag, this thing, for whatever reason, is just not actually being selected for, I guess, unless something else is going wrong there. Now, the block forest 01.png, block orphanage 03, like that stuff, I'm assuming that's lined up properly because we are, like, we in theory, well, here's a question for you. We didn't look at the errors. We probably should, right? So I don't see any errors in there, right? If I saw some errors in there, then I would say maybe we're getting a problem with the errors, but we're not seeing any problems with the errors, right? So if we look in here and say, what is actually happening with our tag grass? Why isn't that working? First thing I want to do is look at that dump. We already have one, so I might as well make use of it, right? If I look at the assets and I just ignore the font for now, and we go down here to see like what else we've got. So here's the forest block and here's the orphanage block. I'm going to look at what tags are in here, and also on the one that we're actually picking, which is the stone one. I think that's this one here, right? Yeah. So you can see they both have the same basic category, so they shouldn't be preferred, and they should all be checked. We have both of them have a floor tag. One of them says it's man-made stone. One of them says it's grass, right? I think that's exactly what they should say. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't pick one or the other. I'm going to go look at the entity code and see what is actually happening there. When we go to do the selection process, did we forget something? I don't know. So what's going to happen when we do this? Inside, here we are. Inside the render group, here's where we're rendering the pieces. When we go ahead and try to access the best match bitmap, we use match vector weight vector. You can see the way this is working is we go through each of the tags that the entity has on it. We set the weight of that thing, and off we go. Now, this code looks a little weird. Oh, no, it has a tag count. Never mind. So for the entire tag count, we go through setting these things. Here's the tags value. And we set the weight of that thing to 1. That should give us an appropriate match, I would think. So I'm not sure why we're not getting that. Let's go ahead and check and see. I'm going to, just to speed things up a little here, I'm going to say, why don't we go ahead and look. When we pull out one of the tags, I'm going to see if it's tags grass. And if it is, I'm going to make this stop, right? Trying to think of another way to do this. Oh, you know what I'll do? There we go. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just making a synthetic line of code that I can break on that I know the optimizer can't really optimize out particularly effectively. I mean, it still kind of could use a conditional move or something, but hoping it won't. So let me go into the entity code. Well, I guess I'll just set a breakpoint by name. That's probably faster than hunting for the file. So update and render entities. Run through. So here we are. Let's go into the code and set a breakpoint on that code right there. When we get down here, we should now be at a situation where the ID is grass. Oh, and I should build in debug mode because, again, I don't really want to struggle with trying to view all of our stuff in debugging there. So off we go. Oh, I should have thought of that. I wouldn't have to do this extra thing. I could have just put int y equals 5 or something because we're in debug mode. All right. So anyway, if I look at the ID, it's a grass tag. So if I look at the match vector, right, here's the match vector. These have to get shrunk. They're huge, right? This is not going to be sustainable. But anyway, here's the match vector. So we've got 18, 19, and 20 are all set. So one is going to be the facing direction, one is going to be the idle, and those are, well, to be honest, I'm not sure why idle gets set every time, but because shouldn't that get unset sometimes? And that's a little confusing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So when we're actually matching those, we've got some here, and those are fine. Those will do whatever they're going to do, and then we're going to set the grass one. The tag count here really should just be, there should only be 2 tags. So let's see it set the grass up here. It should be somewhere. There we go. So there's the grass, and so these 3 things are all set in the vector that we want to match, which are what exactly? Actually, let's take a look. So those are floor and idle. Idle is fine, again, because nobody has that in floors anyway, so it doesn't matter. So it's grass and floor, which is exactly what should be get set, and then facing direction, of course, was set. So that's all fine. And then here we should presumably, well, actually, I don't know what this ID is. What is this ID? Man-made. Huh? So this looks just like a bug in the room generator. Are we setting the man-made tag on everything? Because it ain't man-made. That's not a bug. Yeah, all right. So we don't really want to say that these are man-made, so that's why I was picking it, is because we were saying it had to be man-made, which it doesn't have to be, and of course there is no man-made grass at the moment, so there was nothing to pick. So I think that was the only problem we had there, and I don't know why that didn't show up before, but probably it had something to do with the way that we were matching tags and had set them in order or something weird like that, but that's just a generic bug that we have in the actual room gen code. So in theory, if I go back here now, I should see grass again. Yeah. All right, so I'm glad we fixed that. So our current issues, right? Like I was saying before. So if we take a look at how all this stuff is panning out, what we want to do here is we want outdoor. You know, it doesn't look like grass, right? So we want to be able to put ground cover on here so it looks more like an outdoorsy kind of a scene. We want to put some trees in here as well. In addition, we want to go ahead in here and add like furniture, right? And then we also want to do like some tagging of the orphans properly, which we can't do at the moment either. So we have a bunch of stuff we want to do for pulling in assets and making it easy to like place things around the world that are based on which assets we were trying to place there. So that's what I'd like to sort of focus on now. And, you know, we sort of have like 3 waves, right? We've got that. I want to clean up that asset system diffing a bit. And then I think at that point, we're probably into lighting land, where we've got to sort of go in and simplify and then more universalize the lighting. Because remember, the lighting is only sort of in there temporarily now. We can see sort of the lighting region. And it's good. Like, I like the look that it adds, but it's just not there yet. It's too slow. And we need to start sampling it on sprites as well. Right now we don't sample the lighting on sprites, so it's kind of nonsensical. Like, you know, if you look, these are way too bright, right? They should be dim right now because you can see like how that's working, right? So that's, I think, where we're at. I'll start off by sort of looking at what we can sort of slowly start to bring in here. You know, maybe furniture is a good start. I don't know, but we've got a bunch of stuff we might want to do. So let's just go. If I look at our sources and I go into base game, inside the art directory, one of the things that you can see here is that we've got like items, right? We've got obstacles, and I think we have cover as well in here somewhere. I thought we did anyway. Yeah, and cover. So you can see here there's like ground cover on a sprite sheet that we might want to figure out how to use to like make the grassy area. That's going to be a little more complicated because we need to do something that like scatters that around and draws it and stuff. A more simpler version would be like we could add hats, right? So this is a hat that can go on somebody. Same, here's a baker's hat, right? And so if we wanted to put the hat, and here's a flower, right? Similar to a hat, just a thing that can go on someone's head. So if we wanted to start bringing like items in, for that matter, that would be kind of a good thing to start doing. Maybe we could try putting those on people. And the other thing is this. We've got the obstacles. These are things that can just get plopped down that sort of just like scatter around the environment and can create like, you know, you can't move on this square. Not all of them. Obstacle isn't a great term potentially because like some of them, like this rug, you know, it's not an obstacle really. Like there's no reason you can't hop along the rug. So it's not an obstacle. It's more like decor, if that makes sense. So it's hard to say, but you know, we can cross that bridge when we come to it. So looking at this, right, and again, it's Windows does a really bad job of displaying these. If I load it up into to GIMP, you can sort of get a better feel for what we're actually talking about here. But here's what we actually have. So, you know, there's some like tables and, you know, a couch or whatever, right? And lamps or things like that. Floor lamp, a table lamp, whatever, right? Chair. And so those are those are things we want to be able to place individual instances of. When we do a room gen, we want to like scatter furniture around it, right? And so this seems like an interesting problem. We have to figure out how we want to do it with our asset system. The first thing I would say is we probably, when these things are getting imported, it's not clear to me that we don't just want to tag like every cell separately, right? Because in looking at this, there's no like rhyme or reason to it. I mean, we could try to say like chairs go in one file, or chairs are one thing, and sofas are another. But who cares, right? It doesn't really make a lot of sense as to how we would want these things to be broken up. And so I don't know. The other question I have is like, do we want these to just be in their own files? Like, should they just be split off? And not be imported as a grid worth of things. And again, I don't really know. We can certainly extend our asset sort of information, if you will. We can certainly extend that to say allow me to tag each individual cell separately. And maybe that's the best way to go. But I don't have a lot of other. I don't have much else to say. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about that. So I guess for now, what we'll do is we'll just make there be, in here in the HHT file, if we look at one of these things, I don't know, we've got characters and junk like that. If we were to start adding, here's, where we would add that. So if I wanted to add like Obstacles Forest and Obstacles Orphanage, so let's just say that those were going to be something we were going to add. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them at the top of the file. In fact, I'm going to put them like all the way at the top of the file for now. And what I want to do here is I want to make it so, well, you know what? I guess I don't really have to, because I can just set a breakpoint on that, on obstacles as a type. So, if we look at obstacles at the moment, there's really no difference, I don't think, for obstacles or cover or anything else. They're just going to be straightforward grid imports, And so the question is just, if I want to do tags equals something, I'm just thinking, well, I could do it this way, where I just like talk about individual like places where the tags line up. If I was to open this up, so I say, okay, open this up. I can like tag each individual one of these things based on like which grid cell it's in, And I don't actually know if we've got any way of quantifying that exactly. I don't see a template for that either. So if I was to drag this over here and just do a couple of them, so, here's one of them, so I can see which grid cell it's in, right? We could make a grid that would sort of align these things together. I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. I don't think this is a good idea. I think these should be separate files. So I'm just going to say that's what we're going to do. So if I wanted to make these separate files, then what I'm going to do is say, like, we've got chairs or something, right? Or furniture sets. Like, these things should go together so that we have, like, for a particular set, we know that, this and this go together or something like that. So if we're trying to make, like, a thing where they're the same textile or something, we could do that. And similarly, like, yeah, like if we had like different styles of rug, they would go together. So you could pick like a variant. But I don't really want one. I don't like that these are all together because it just. I'm not sure what advantage that would ever give us. You don't need to edit them at the same time because they're not really related in any meaningful way. You know what I mean? So I'm not feeling it. I don't think we want to actually do that. Um, and the same is probably true for the ground cover to a certain extent. Like we probably want to just have it be that each file for something like ground cover is just a bunch of random versions of the same ground cover so that you load it in and you just use that as any one of these is interchangeable or something, right? So I don't know. That's my feeling on it. And I would say that that means that if I was to open up one of the item templates, so this thing, right? We've got like floor state and worn and stuff like that. So what I want to do is say, look, these directional things are still going to be there. And instead, these are just variants going off the side, right? So, if I want to load one of these things in, what I would do is just say, okay, like give me this thing. And I'm going to paste it in here, right? And I'm going to stick it up into there, like so. And so that's the chair facing that way. And then, maybe like someone could redraw this as well, facing like all the directions so that we would have different ways of like placing those or whatever. Of course, I can't see it because the GIMP is sort of, there we go. Let me just duplicate this layer out a bit. There we go. So if I wanted to make another one of these, I could do like transform, rotate. No, wrong one. Right, and it's not correct, but like so. Then Anna could go draw these so that they're properly facing all the different directions. But this will at least let us test it for now. Why does it happen? All right, this way. And all right. So now we have all the different ones. I'm going to turn off layer boundaries because I don't care what the layer boundaries are. And I'm just going to place these inside the grid cells to which they are bound. I don't really know how to even that out. Yeah. I do fear that these are maybe not leaving enough empty space around them, but that's okay. We should really add that padding. That should have really been our problem, not the artists. All right. So like if you imagine that's the state of things, what I'm also going to do is say, let's suppose there's a variant as well. So let's just pretend, and I'll actually, now that I can just merge these down, right? Let's pretend that we want to have a second set of these. And I'm just gonna drag that over, and this is just to make the variance of these that we so that we can test, what's going on there, right? So let's, oops, it's kind of a little bit far over. Seems good. Right, and so let's test this by saying, suppose we made one of these other variants here. What is hue chroma? That's a new slider. Interesting. Let's just change the color of these, right? So, you know, it's like, hey, there's the red chairs, and there's the green chairs, and that's just what there is. So, you know, don't blame me about it. And then we'll save that off as well. I suppose I should delete this underlying piece here. And then merge these. All right. So now we've got something that's effectively a PNG for the chair, and that would allow us to test importing that as an item. And I think we don't really want to call it an item. I think we want to call it like a decoration or something. So I think what we want to do is call this something else. So, you know, we've got items, and those are things that you can like wear or pick up, right? And then so this is not an item. What this more is just a decoration. So this is like a I don't know, something you place in the world that you know, has potentially an orientation to it and variant. So it's orientation and variant. I would call it maybe as opposed to, you know, obstacle is again a little rough because we don't know that it's an obstacle. So I don't know if it's maybe like just scenery. Let's say. Does that work for, and does anyone care about that? I don't know. So I'm going to call it scenery chair, I guess orphanage chair. And I don't know, like this is the naming convention. It looks like it would start at 1. It starts at 1. That was being used. So, you know, maybe that's that, right? So let's export that out. And we'll say that there is no such thing as obstacles anymore. Looking at this, you know, maybe I want to create a couple more of these for testing purposes, right? I'm going to have these get remade, so, you know, we'll see. But so let's suppose that we want to do like, you know, the area rug or something, or the lamp. So if I wanted to do one of those sorts of things, I could say like, all right, let's grab the lamp out. There's only one of these, right? It's just the lamp. There's nothing else to it. So if I, if I grab this one and paste it in here, I'm going to put it up in the corner like so. And then we'll just save that out. I'll get rid of this and say we'll export that as a ping. And that can be like a lamp. And maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe I should have said there was a variant, but I don't know. Floor lamp versus table lamps seems different. Really, this should have been two things. One, it should have been like a lamp and then a table, and we can use them both. So we probably want to split those out eventually. But who cares? So anyway, I'm going to say that that's what's going on with that. And then if I load up some of this other stuff here, so let me load up like Obstacles Forest, see what's up with that. So if we look at what's going on here, what you can see is it's sort of like we have some seasonal things sort of happening here, right? And there's like different kinds of trees. And I'm not sure how we want to... I'm not sure how we want to characterize that, really. we may just want this to be a generic kind of thing that's like foliage, and it has like two parameters, like snow covered, right, and um, snow covered and barren. I don't know. You can kind of see like there's different things you may want drawn there, and yeah, I'm not really sure about that. So you can see here we've got like snow covered as a parameter, right? And I don't really know exactly what this was. Like it's kind of gray and weird. Is it dead? This might be dead. Death, possibly. I'm not sure. Or burnt. So we've got snow covered, burnt, and we've also got like the degree of foliage. So there's a couple different variants for trees, and they seem pretty specific to trees. So it seems like we would want a specific tree thing, right? So I'm not sure about that. That one seems harder. Let me take a look at the items. I think they're just fine because they're just already, yeah. This is like worn on the ground, right? I'm not sure what else was in that template. It's like two different on the floor versions. I'm not sure why there are two on the floor versions. I'm not sure what I had contemplated for that. But usually most things would just have one floor state and then a worn state. That'd be my assumption. I don't know what floor state 2 is about, but I guess maybe I had something in mind. So those will just load. What else we got? So let's go to ground cover and see what's up with that. So inside ground cover, and I'm just so I can see it, I'm going to make a new layer here. And I'm going to make it just pure white for the moment. Or I was going to try to, there we go. And I'm just going to go like this. And so now we can look in here and see. So if you look at what's going on here, I feel like to a large extent, there's sort of two separate types of thing in here. And, well, three, I guess. Pebbles is one, too. So I think we just really need to separate these into two categories for the grass. Clump and, like, splotch, right? These are tiny and this is bigger. And then we've got sort of a stones thing. And I think those just want to be separated out, right? So I would say these are sort of particle-ish. So my guess is these want to be just particles, kind of. Like we just have one thing for particle, and that's it. I don't think we need anything else probably for that. So my assumption here is we would just do like, okay, take the template like so, grab the stuff from here, so like these four, that did not work because I was on the wrong layer. Ah, the Photoshop layer paradigm. Always, never what you want. So if I come up here and line those up with the grid, and then in here I just grab like one more of these, right? And I plop that in here. Nope. Then what I can do is pretty faint, but I can position that like in here, like so. And now I've got, you know, a file that is, let me go ahead and delete these layers. Oops. There we go. I can just export this as like particle something like that. See? And then after we got particle grass, I can do one of the other ones here. So whatever these like smaller ones are here, like all of those look fine. I don't know what that is. It looks kind of dead. So maybe that should not be in there. That should be like a separate thing. But I'm gonna grab like these other ones that look like stamps, more like. I'm gonna skip. So I could also make a small grass one, but I don't think I need it. Like, I don't know that we would need small grass ones if we have these, because they're sort of just the same. So I don't know. We'll see. This is something that can be worked out with the art a little bit later too. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these ones that look like splotches to me. So like these, these all look like splotches. So let me come over here and paste those in. And then I'm going to see about what else we got. So these look like splotches. And then we can get rid of this one. And then I want to just grab like some of these other ones that look like splotches, if there are any other ones. So, you know, like I guess these are flowers, so they should probably be in their own thing. So I'm gonna say this is another export as, and that's going to be particle like grass splotch or something. And all of these were just made for testing, so we don't really know if they're going to look at all right, but that's okay. You know what I'm saying? It's really weird that it changes the size of these when you click on them. That's just horrible. Anyway, so if we now go to the flowers, these are all flowers, it looks like. So I should be able to, well, I probably want to do just 4 here. Paste those in. And then I'll grab the last flower here. And so I'll just drag that over here and call it a day. All right. So that can be saved as our particle flowers 01. And again, these are ones where nothing is differentiated. It's just a series of different things you could use for flowers, and that's it. And I guess we've got stones too, so we'll do that one. As the last one. So that gives us plenty of things to import now. And I'm going to go back and say we're not going to do the trees just yet because I really don't know what to do with them. So I'm going to go back in here and make a slight change to the way these are going. So we've got the blocks, we've got the orphan bodies and heads and that stuff. I'm going to take this out of the mix now because I don't care about that. We pulled those out into different particles. And again, this is going to be someone else's job to make these files eventually anyway. So we've got the ground cover separated out into particle files. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I don't care about ones that I didn't quite grab. So we're going to get rid of cover forest. In obstacles forest, we're going to leave that and that because we haven't pulled necessarily everything out that we want to try. So we've got scenery as a thing, we've got particle as a thing, we've got item as a thing. Obstacles and cover, so cover, I think we now don't have, because I deleted the only thing that was cover, right? So cover is gone. So obstacles is here, but we don't want to parse it. So just to signify that, I'm going to do that for now and put them up there. Just so you can see that like these are really probably just going to get deleted. We're not going to ever use those. And so this is really what we're going to parse now is really this back half. So the items, particles, and scenery. Let's do that. Okay. So moving into here, we don't have these anymore. So these are just gone. Goodbye. And now we've got these item files. So we've got item hat 01, 02, 03. Then we've got these particles. Oops. And this is going to be particle flowers 01.png. And these are grass large and grass splotch, I think. Yeah. And then we've got stones. Right, so we've got flowers, grass large, grass flowers, and stones. We're gonna have to tag these all with something. And then we've got the scenery. So scenery, orphanage, chair. And then scenery. This is just a lamp, right? Yeah. So these are the things we want to import here. And again, now we need to like figure out how we want to tag these when they come in. So when these get imported, they're all going to have some tag associated with them so we know what they are. And that's the part that I'm not sure about yet. So off we go. Obviously, these are easy. They're all hats, so we can start with that at least. We can also say that they're worn might be. I don't know if we need that tag really, but you know, because the hat is worn. But you know, so we've got hats, and then the three different hats. We've got sort of like a sun hat, and we had back in our tags. We sort of had some ideas of how these things go. Like right there was like this sort of stuff. So I think we just want these to match. So like this is a cooking hat, obviously. So I think this should just be like cook, right? And this is like a gardening hat, right? So it'd be like an earth hat, probably, if that makes sense. So that hat here, right, is that kind of hat. And then we had a hat. It's not really a hat. It's like a flower, but it's okay. And maybe that's like spring. I don't know. So then if we're on flowers here, like we've got flowers, grass. I don't know what we want to do with these exactly. Because it's a little bit harder to say. Obviously, the the grass should get tagged with grass. That's not hard to understand. But there's like different sort of styles here of ways in which things are getting sort of plunked down. And so I feel like that would probably want to be some sort of differentiation there. Also, grass, probably there should be flowers as a thing as well. I don't know how we want to do this. Or tag size. So you can tag things like with a size, like how big of a splotch type of thing do you want to put down? Maybe, right? So something like that. So, you know, this is like a size 2 and you know, or this is like a size 1 and this is like a size 0.5. You know what I mean? Just something like that. And so here, this would be like flowers, splotches, right? So they're sort of a little bit different. And then here we would have stone, and these are splotches as well. That seems reasonable, I guess. Don't have a lot of knowledge of how we're going to really do this as we sort of moving forwards. It's all just kind of like, well, let's try this. If I add those here, yeah, I don't think we had like any sort of thing for tag, like for a sizing tag, like something that sort of said the largeness of something. But I think we do want that, so we'll put that in there. So we've got that, and then we're down to some stuff here like the chair and the lamp. I feel like, do we have like orphan maybe? Like these go with the orphanage, right? It's man-made. Trying to think if there's anything else we want in here. So I think we just need like extra tags for these. So this is chair. And I feel like those should be specified as like an orphanage because they specifically go in this area. I don't know. That seems like a good plan, but we'll see as we go forward, right? So in here, I'm going to go ahead and just grab these tags out. And we will say that we've got chair and lamp. And I think that's it. That seems like everything. At the moment, anyway. And so now what I really need to do is change up how we're ingesting these, because what we want is now previously, you know, we knew about item, and previously we had like cover and obstacles. We don't want that. We want particle and scenery. Those are the two things that looks like we want. So in the importer where those were stubbed out, we're just going to change what we're actually looking for. You can see that happening right in here, right? You know, it's item, obstacles, plate, blah, blah, blah. And so we're not actually going to be doing this. These are wrong. So we want, like, for example, particle, like so, and then scenery, like so. And we set ourselves up for success here, I think, maybe, in that these just work or should just work. And so this error is just going to tell us, hey, we changed what those tag types are, so maybe you should go fix them, right? And let's go ahead and do that now. So if we look at where these are coming in, they're in the asset system. They're marked up, I believe, yeah, right here. So we want like the cover tags and like all that stuff. This needs to change now, so that's particle tags. And this needs to change to scenery tags, and then we need to actually specify them, because these were getting done when we initialized the asset system. Right now, I don't think anyone actually fills out any of those. You can see right here, we've got those sort of stubbed out as functions. I don't think they do anything at the moment, so I want to be able to do like create particle tag grid and scenery tag grid. And if I actually jump to one of those things like, what is it, create cover tag grid or art cover tag grid, there. So we look in here, we just got to-dos, right? It's like, hey, you've got to put in something into this tag grid. So this one's pretty easy. I think what we can do is just say, all right, if we, create one of these things, like so. By default, what we're going to do with the particle tag grid is it's just 4 and 4, right? We're not doing 8 by 8, so we're just doing 4 and 4. They're smaller imports, and what we want to do is just tag them as variants. So there is no facing direction; it's just a variant, right? And this should be like an asset particle, I think. I want to look and see where we're actually saying that. So here's the basic categories, and you can see all this stuff. A lot of these we could collapse down. They don't need to be here anymore. But I'm going to go ahead and say that there's a particle category, scenery. Oh, well, and you know what? I don't even have to do that. I can just do this because we're not using these. So cover became particle, obstacle became scenery. And so asset particle is actually what it is. It's going to be a tag variant. The variant's just going to be whatever the variant is, right? And that's it. I don't think we actually need to do this. It's just for each one, that's what it is, right? We don't touch the other ones. And I think that just works. I think, famous last words. Oh, and we'll check this to particle. These could just be a nice lookup later. You can sort of see that happening. Probably not worth bothering at the moment, but eventually we could collapse all these down, and maybe we should do that sometime soon. But all right. So looking through here, this is art particle tags. This is art scenery tags. We now need to do the ones for the items and for the scenery. Let's go ahead and do those. So if I jump back to import, on the scenery tag grid, and so both the scenery tag and the item tag are both directional. So we do want to keep this sort of the thing that we were using for hands. That's the template we want to use for both of these, right? Because we do want to set that facing direction the entire time. Now, we don't need to do asset import grid max. We only do a 4x4, like so. And so for each of these, we also can just do this. And so the 4x4 to get set up with the facing direction as it should. And for the item tag grid, I believe we can just do asset item here and asset scenery here, and that takes care of itself. But what we need to do now is say, all right, when we're doing the facing direction, we also need to do something about the x coordinate, because each of the x coordinates is actually a little bit different, right? Like we're gonna have to specify a different tag for each of these. So in here, we're going to want to do a thing where we say, look, if the x is 0, or if it's 1, or if it's 2, or if it's 3, we're going to add different things. Now, we don't really want to use 3 because there isn't anything in the third row yet as far as we know. So we really just want to do something like this, probably, where we're just adding a tag for these. Oops. And so in the first one, this was like on floor, right? I don't know what we want to tag that with. This one is like worn. And this one, I guess we don't really know. I don't know what that variant is. But so I guess what we want to do is tag this with variant as well. So, I guess it's like, hey, case 0, case 1 is the same and falls through, I guess. Something like this. Should probably just actually do this. So this one's like worn. You know what I'm saying? And here we're going to add the it's on the floor. And here this is the variant 1 as opposed to the variant 0, I guess. So not 100% sure like what that was supposed to accomplish exactly. So it's something like that. For the scenery tag grid, it's a little bit simpler. It's always the same stuff. The facing direction is set off the Y. The variant is set off the X. So it's just like... Actually, should have just kept this. It's literally this. Right? So I guess that seems good. Maybe, you know, I don't know. You know, now I think about it too, this variant here really should just be, it should be divided by 16, right? So this should be more like this, because we want them to be normalized to 1, just to make it easier for us to randomly pick them. We wouldn't have to know how many there are. We can just pick things in the range of 0 to 1, and it'll always work no matter how many there are, right? So for variants, I think we do want to do something more like this, right? And you know, that way we always ensure that they're normalized out. Although that does put a slightly, if you're using rounding, that's not exactly what you want. You actually want it to be divided by the maximum you can get to. If you want it to end at 1, so you know, like, I'm not sure how you want to striate those, right? You probably want to actually bucket them, so, and use truncation. So I don't know. We have to sort of think about that. That variant tagging is going to have to get thought about harder at some point. You know, but point being, that is the more like bucket oriented variant. If you assumed you were like truncating, since we're taking distances, not truncating currently, you know, it's not what you would actually want to do. What you actually want to do is space them out as like beacons throughout the space that have an equal amount on either side of them. So, you know, 0, the first variant shouldn't be 0, right? And so, you know, just to sort of sketch out what I'm talking about here. In terms of making variants maybe work with distance a little bit better, what you would want to do is say, well, one of them should be, you know, you kind of want to divide it up into thirds, right? And one of them should be occupying the range that's like, you know, from 0 to 0.5, it's right in the middle of that. And the other one should be from 0.5 to up, and it's right in the middle of that, right? And so, yeah, it's a little bit complicated. But so point being, we probably would want something that looks more like this. That way, when you do what's closest, from 0 to 0.5, you're closest to this variant, and from 0.5 to 1, you're closest to this variant, right? And we don't really care about breaking the tie. So, I don't know, that seems like maybe the more correct variant version. So if I look at where we were setting those before, so in here, right, same thing is going to be true. What you want to do here is say, look, we need to divide the space up so that we properly are shifted up by half of the range, and then we go up by the range each time. So instead of something that looks like this, what we really need to do is add in half of that total range. So if 1/16 is the amount that we go up each time, we want, you know, like a shift that produces that offset, right? So something like this. And that just shifts the range up so that everybody has the same amount of like ground they're covered. Again, just sketching this in. We don't have to do it. We can look at this in more detail later. We don't have to really think it through. Particularly much here. I could also just compute this off of the grid. It's not really necessary to do it. Right, you can make this a completely parallelizable loop if you want to. So anyway, coming back down to here, looking at sort of like the other stuff we've got. We are inside the art item tag grid. Looks like everything's fine there, except we haven't defined one of these yet. I don't think there is one already for clothing. So I think we need to just add that in, right? Where's my array? There it is. All right. So worn gets thrown in there automatically for that one. It's like if someone has put this on, you know, that tag will get activated. For scenery, we just have facing direction and variant. I think that's it. And cover is just particle is just a set of variants. I don't think there's anything else to it. So I think those should now just import all of those art assets correctly. I don't know that there's anything else we actually need to do to make them work. We can obviously see if that's true. I could be completely wrong about that. Let's go ahead and try it. And then, you know, if it rolls over and dies, it does. That kind of did look like it rolled over and died because it didn't do anything. Yeah. So unrecognized tag name hat and unrecognized... well, actually, that might just be because it's not there. So it looks like hat was never never specified. So what is that? Hat just goes. I guess we just need that here, right? It's just a tag. We'll see how that does. Probably no better. But hey, we can at least see what the errors are. So if I run this, well, that did spend some time. So it looks like it did actually update now. So hopefully now we've got those in here to play with. And, you know, if I do a dump just to see if that's the case, how much time? I don't know. I got like 15 minutes left. If I do a dump just to see what actually happened there. So here's that same dump that I ran before. I'll do it again. What just happened? Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. So if I redo that dump and now I look at it here, I should see appended to the end of this, I should have got some new assets in here, right? Let's see. I don't really know. This doesn't look promising. I'm not sure why there are these sort of fonts sitting around in there. Maybe they were just from being updated, but that's not great. But looking in here, these actually do look somewhat great. All of this looks real nice. So all of that importing did seem pretty good. Yeah, I think these just kind of stack up there, unfortunately. It's not great. Again, I think that's where we might want to clean up some of that code. So this stuff looks fine, right? All of that looks fine to me. So that's all well and good. No real problem there. Let's go ahead and take a look at what else we can do here that might make some sense. So let's try, if we wanted to put one of these in the world, I don't really want to try the ground cover yet, because that's sort of a separate system we'll have to sort of put in there. So what I'd rather do is if we went to, well, the most straightforward thing we could do, right, is, I guess when you add a player, you know, that's going to construct this thing. We could add a hat on there, right? So that would be here, actually. I just want to see if we can load this thing up. So the asset type here is going to be an asset item. We're going to have to fuss with this stuff a little bit. I'm not sure how we want all that to work. But when we actually create that hat piece, we're going to need an item there. And this actually brings up a nice thing that we can, maybe this is what we can do tomorrow, that I wanted to fix, is that the tags are uniform. So like, you can't set different tags on different visible pieces. I have a plan of how I wanted to fix some of that and do it a little bit differently than it's being done in a way that I think is better. So we can talk about that a little bit later. But what I'd like to do first is just say, okay, when we add one of these players, how can we get like a hat on there, right? Because right now I'm not seeing one, right? Let me... so if you look, like there's no, it's just those two pieces, right? So the question is like, what's the problem? Why can't we get an asset item for that hat pulled in here, right? Because we should be able to find like something. And I don't know, we could put tag worn in there as well, but again, we shouldn't really have to, because it should find something. It should find a hat, I would think. So let's try to see why. If I create some code really quickly just to make it easy for me to find when that happens, right? So, you know, when we do... oh, wait, I forgot. It's not attached. So I want to attach this to top of head, right? So that's probably what I screwed up. I didn't actually connect that piece to anything. So I may not actually have to do the test that I thought I was going to do. But we'll see. I still do, right? It's not there. All right, so let me go ahead and set a breakpoint in something convenient so we can take a look at it. I do, or you know what? It could be that top of head is also just not set. So I should just actually set these alignment points first, just to make sure that that's not an issue. It could be that it just can't find that alignment point, right? So let me just do due diligence here. We'll pick one of these right here, and I need to add an alignment point for that. So it would be called top of head. Oh, hey, and look, there it is. So it would be called top of head. I don't really know where it would go exactly. It looks like it's sort of wrong, picking the wrong facing direction though. So I don't know if maybe we've got the facing directions a little bit wrong on those items or something like that. We'll have to take a look. But hey, it does work. Taking a look at this, that needs a default to do alignment for it, but at the moment we don't really care. If I look at the facing directions on these, right, so let me pick the other one here. There's that top of head. And finally, there we go. Um, so each of these has a top of head now. And I can save that. So if I want to save the HHT, in theory, everything worked. Hey, look, it didn't change these two, which is great, because we didn't want it to. But we did change this one, which is it should have, right? And so now, like, again, we're just trying to figure out how well the system works at all. It looks like it kind of does there a little bit, but it looks like the facing direction, because that should have been that flower. But it wasn't. And so I don't really know how to investigate that further without... I probably want to set some breakpoints and look at it. But so if we look at the item template here, if I open this up and... well, I'll be honest, I can tell it's wrong already. Yeah, these just aren't right. So if we look at the way this one works, if I go to the template here, you can see it's supposed to be going that way, and it so totally definitely isn't, right? Like, it's actually this direction. That's this one. So it's just wrong. So again, I think we're fine. I think it's the actual source art there that's wrong. I will say one odd thing that I don't understand is why do we not get one for the downward direction? Like, what's going on there, right? That makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't understand why we're not getting a downward, right? I mean, we've got, there is a top of head attachment point there. You know, we're looking at it. And yet, for some reason, that one doesn't actually show up. And the facing direction there, right, is the only difference. Each one of these, the facing direction, it does pick it out properly, right? So I don't know why we're not getting... I don't know why we're not getting any data there. That's weird. So I want to go look and see what did it actually say it was doing when it imported that particular hat. I think that one's the first one, right? Or wait, which one is it? No, it's the third one. So it's the 03. And here are the 4 things that got imported from 03. So what's up with that? If I look at the tags, well, there's your answer. So 3.3, the facing direction for the item got imported the same in both cases. Why? What's going on here? How could that possibly be true? I mean, looking at this, it looks like it's off by 1 in like a weird way, right? There's also like way too many of these. Two zero one one 21 22 23 33. Like, where is it getting that? Is there actually data in there? So I think there is some kind of a bug in the importing too, right? Because there should only have been one column recorded. And these fall well within the column, right? There's nothing... it's not like this is like overlapping or something. So for some reason, when this got pulled in, it thinks there's a lot more of them than there are. Now, what's really weird about that is it's only this one. Right? This one has 2, 0, just like this one, but then it has 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. It's way more imports than there should be. These all came in right. So that's correct. That hat's good, right? But this hat is totally borked. It's got a total of 6 imports, so it should have been 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3. Instead, there is a 3, 3 and a 1, 1. So the bottom corner had something in it. Is that actually true? But I really don't see anything down there. So it thinks the bottom corner had something in it, and it also thinks that this had something in it. Right? And that explains why we're not getting one for this facing direction. It's because, you know, it's picking this one because they're equivalent. It thinks they're both fine because they're both going to be labeled the same. But they totally aren't. So that's really strange. I don't know how to actually ask GIMP if there are any pixels somewhere. Like, I don't know. I think that's a pretty clear indication that there aren't, I would assume. Because, like, it's entirely pegged at 0, right? So, I mean, I think that tells us what we need to know. Famous last words. I'm going to end it there and say that tomorrow that'll be our debugging to figure out what's going on with that import. Because something's busted. I'm not sure what. These two hat files seem to come in just fine, and this one can't. And I have no idea why. If I was to set the cook flag on us, I assume we would then be okay. So for example, if in here I did this, I'm assuming we wouldn't have this problem because the cook hat seems like it works. At least from, you know, cursorily looking at the import level, right? Of course, our whole body changes from hero because we are now the cook instead of the hero. But that's okay. There's our headpiece. We have to actually add the alignment points. I'll do that really quickly just for fun and profit. So let's add a base of neck on there. And we also want to add oh, we already have a top of head. I don't know how to really adjust this particularly. This is 2 parent, right? I need to like rethink about how I'm drawing these. I don't really know how to do these quite right. And as we know, the hero head is on backwards. We have to do an art drop to like clean up all the art problems that we've had. I should be making a list, but I'm not. Because these have to get done off stream, right? All right. Anyway. So it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I mean, I think all this just works okay. I mean, you know, it's a lot of art asset cleanup we have to do because, of course, like all this stuff we have to add, like where they snap together and stuff, which is, you know, just one of the things that creates a lot of work for game development always. That's just how it is. But, I don't even know why I'm bothering doing this right now, but... Oh, duh. So if I forgot to put it into debug camera. Okay. Yeah, that was stupid. So that's why I couldn't see anything. It's because you have to be in debug camera mode before those things get man, I forgot about that. There we go. So yeah, so it seems like all that stuff works just fine. It's just for some reason we have an import problem on that. So I guess that's our job for tomorrow. I'm gonna go to a Q&A real quick here, but that's gonna be our job for tomorrow, is to figure out why we don't properly only use the ones that are actually there. Was Michael Abrash around during your time at RAD? Yes. In fact, I am one of the people who talked him and Mike Sarton into coming to work there. Copy path snafu with the variant using y-index instead of x-index in the scenery tag grid. Thank you. Let me go mark that before we forget. That is what I meant or wanted, I should say. How about ornaments for the oriented furniture instead of scenery? Nah, I don't love it. I'm creating an OpenGL engine in C#. I really enjoy the language and I'm enjoying the process, but should I just move to C++? I don't think you have to do that. I mean, C# is reasonable. I can't stand garbage collection. It drives me insane. So, you know, I personally wouldn't really want to use C#, but you know, that's just my personal preference, you know, in how I want to deal with my code. So I don't think there's any particular reason, you know, it's not like PHP or something where I'd be like, oh my god, no, right? C# is reasonable. I mean, it's, you know, it's a real language. It has, you know, good trace compilation and stuff on it as far as I know. So it's, you know, it's not a complete pile that's going to always run really slow. The garbage collection isn't great, but you know, that just means that's something you'll have to work around in the future, but you know, it's not the end of the world. People have shipped games in C#. It's not uncommon. And if you want to use Unity in the future, you know, obviously that uses C# as the main language you use to program it. So you've got a leg up there if you want to use Unity. You already know how to program it well. If you're aiming more Unreal Engine, that's not so good because I don't think people generally use C# for that. But what's your learning method when faced with a new topic? How do you juggle figuring things out yourself versus reading a textbook? So, unless it's like a really well-studied branch of something, like, I want to learn partial differential equations or something, then I might go to a textbook. But other than that case, I don't really read textbooks very often. But what I do is I go surfing for papers. So, like, let's say I want to implement, like, screen space lighting or something, right? I generally don't just start doing it myself unless I'm like really sure that everyone's just an idiot in that domain and I don't need to, right? But with something like, let's say, screen space lighting, I know there's a lot of smart people who've done things in that area. So what I tend to do is I just go surfing for technical content. I get a big stack of papers in PDF form on the hard drive, right? And then I just read them all. And I don't try to like understand every last thing because technical papers are usually pretty bad at explaining technical concepts, amusingly enough. But I just read them to see like generally what are people doing? Like what sorts of things have people done? What sounds good to me? Whatever. And then I'll focus on like one or two and like really go in and learn like, okay, what do I think they were actually doing here, right? And then I'll go and start writing my own stuff. But I really do tend to try to read technical papers first because typically, again, unless it's just like a really idiot area, like some areas are just nobody good ever goes there, right? But other than like that fairly rare occurrence where you literally have a place that is just devoid of talent, you're gonna find some technical papers that at least will inform your thinking on it and give you new ideas. And so while I don't necessarily recommend assuming that someone else has already solved the problem, because oftentimes when I go, I do find that there's like things I want to do that maybe weren't addressed, or there's ideas I have that weren't tried by other people. It's rare that I don't get ideas from tech papers. At least some, even if it's just because you have an idea about how to do something better than what they did, that idea came from reading the paper, right? So I really do recommend learning to do that if you can. There's a lot of good stuff in technical papers. And even if the technical papers don't actually have the answer you're looking for, they may inspire the answer, right? They may provide context that allows you to get to the answer quicker. And that's equally important. Do you have an official code style guide anywhere? Yes, my code style guide is if someone tries to tell you to use a code style guide, fire them. Hi from Hungary. Hello. I don't know that I've ever had anyone write in from Hungary before. I had someone from Serbia today, and now someone from Hungary. Those are new places for people writing in. We also had someone from France, but I think I had someone from France write in before. I took your advice you gave me last week and started a blog to get involved in the game industry. It contains a few posts already and some descriptions of my earlier projects. Maybe worth reading sometime. sandordeek.home.blog. Oops. Didn't mean to delete that. Let's take a look. Typing. All right, cool. Let's take a look. Wait, I thought there was one up here that said something. How come... How does this work? So how come it just kind of ended here, but there was more? I'm confused. So these are like different... Ah, I see. Yeah, the Sesame Street. I'll have to check this out. What? Why is video unavailable? Looks like these videos need to be updated. There's my only piece of feedback so far. Video needs to be updated. So this does seem like a good start to me. I don't know, like, I'll have to spend a little bit more time reading through it, obviously, but I would say you got to fix the videos too. I want to watch this, whatever it is. In-house progress earlier, worked on a project. Yeah, like I want to. I like this. Is this like a? Is this like subsurface scattering kind of thing? Because I like this. This is interesting. I would like to see more about this. You should expand this part. Hi from Bulgaria. Wow. I'm starting an internship in July at a game studio. I'm super excited and I feel I owe you a lot of gratitude for keeping me excited about game dev. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. I've seen your name a lot on here, Frosty Ninja. Is a Frosty Ninja a ninja that gets like a Frosty, like the ice cream treat, and like unwraps their like mask and like eats it? Or is a Frosty Ninja one that's like a snowman who's also a ninja, like Frosty the Snowman or something? Oh, Brian was asking, you have a distinct coding style, and though I realize you may have evolved into it over the years, so I was wondering if there was something specific that directed you. Yeah, two things really. I would say one is that I think I want to say that my dad originally used the, like, some people use the squashed brace style where you move the brace up to here. I think my dad did it this way. It may be because I was a Pascal programmer. It could have been because of him. I can't remember why I used that brace style. But so I don't remember. But that's one thing. The next thing is Chris Hecker was the person who I picked up the lowercase type names, uppercase functions and variable names. And that's sort of arbitrary. That's where I picked it up from, but that's sort of arbitrary. But I've recently come to think that maybe it's not so arbitrary, because assuming that you use the assuming that you use the rule, anything that is lowercase is a type, and anything that starts with uppercase is not a type. That means you can always automatically complete the capitalization of anything knowing only the first letter. If you do it the other way around, you can't. And the reason for that is C, by default, defines its types as lowercase. And even though you can just easily avoid not using any of C runtime library's functions, you cannot avoid using C's types because they are required, right? You have to use int char. There's no other way to do that, right? Whereas you can easily just choose to only have your own functions, which can all be capitalized, right? So hard to say, but you know, there may be some reasons to do it this way. Finally, the reason there's a return between here and here is I just like to put the function name on a line by itself. Especially when I used to program C++, these lines can get really long. Like if you have like a template and crap on here, it can just... And so I like to split those out, return type versus function name. Just was easier to find the function name, right? Ah! There. Sorry. Are U32, F32 aliases? Yeah, they are. They're not. The language doesn't know what a U32 is. The language just knows what like an int unsigned is. Right. All right. I think we're all good. I'll close this up. By the way, I forgot to thank George. I don't know if you remember, but we were having some crashes in Remedy when we used it on the stream the other day. He actually fixed it like overnight for us. That's why we didn't have any troubles today. So meant to thank X13 Pixels on the chat. I don't know if he's there today, but he fixes bugs in this thing like at so fast it reminds me of just how slow it takes Microsoft to ever fix any bugs in their stuff. It's just like, yeah, it's like I had a problem on Saturday and he fixed it by Sunday morning. We didn't end up using it on Sunday morning. I felt bad because we went down the rat hole because someone had asked about how to draw the circle, right? But it was fixed last weekend on Sunday morning. It was ready for us, right? So that's why it didn't crash at all this weekend, is because he fixed it like right away. And so just thought I'd say thanks for being so fast on the bug reports. It's pretty nice to have some confidence that when your debugger crashes, you can actually send the crash to somebody and then it gets fixed. Like, I mean, that's actually a feeling that I don't have with software pretty much ever anymore. I mean, like, we get Photoshop crashes every day. They'll never get fixed. I mean, I don't think they'll ever get fixed. I don't even know how to really report them correctly, but they never get fixed. I mean, they're bugs that have, as far as I can tell, have been in there for years, right? And if they do fix them, then they just add new ones, so you never really know, but it's weird. But you never get them fixed, like, even confirmed that you fixed them, right? This never happens. It's, or like web stuff I use, Gmail has the same bugs in it that it's had for years. The Wacom driver has the same bugs in it that it's had for years. I mean, it's just rot, really. When porting to other platforms, do you have to rewrite all your shaders in HLSL and MetalSL? Is there a way to transpile GLSL? Yeah, That's just shaders are a gigantic failure. The fact that they couldn't have one stupid language is absurd. Especially because they're all the same. Like they can't. It's not like they all do the same thing, right? They all compile down to the same crap. Um, on the different cards, and it's just a disaster. Just a huge disaster. Uh, I don't know of any great thing to suggest there. All I would say is that some people use trans compilers or translators, I guess what you'd call them. They do exist. So there's a couple like open source ones that are just like, look, this is a thing that takes HLSL and dumps metal out or things like that. Like they do exist. I forget the names of them, but yeah. Uh, it's ridiculous that I don't even know what to say. It's not like these cards do. They're just computing generic math stuff. Like I don't even know it. They don't even have branching, right? They just have masking even. So it's I don't know. I guess they do have branching now. They've got loops. So I shouldn't say that. They can do loops now. So that's not true. They do have branching. But anyway, it's absurd. I'm gonna go ahead and close it down here. I also should mention before we go anywhere for the day. Oops. I think this is working now. I think.
First time in
Russia, and then when it came to giving a talk, it made me think about some things that transpired between both of our societies.
So there is now a English-only version of John's talk he gave in. Well, actually, I guess I don't know where it is. Somewhere in Russia, but I don't actually know where. Russia's a big country, so that's kind of not narrowing it down. Okay, so it's in Moscow, I guess. So there's a talk he gave in Moscow just like a day or two ago, and there is now a version supposedly English only. I haven't listened to the whole thing in English yet. I had to listen to the one with the Russian simultaneous translation, which was kind of brain-bending. So if you're interested in John's talk, which if you watch Handmade Hero, you probably are, because it's very much about the kinds of stuff we always talk about in Handmade Hero, I would recommend giving this a watch. It's on my Twitter feed if this is annoying. You can go to twitter.com/Twitter.com/Sumitori. Maybe we'll get the link in here on the annotations as well. But basically, John just consolidated into a talk a pretty clean set of things. It's like, here's why things are pretty bad right now with some specific evidence that not I, but he collected, and then like why you should care about it. It contains an important point that I think is not it's not articulated often, and I don't think I ever really thought about it much beyond just my feeling. Like, it was a self-evident fact to me, but I never thought to really say it out loud. And when you say it out loud, with like that John did, and more specifically Elon Musk said it out loud, and John was quoting him. But when you say it out loud, you realize that people don't ever say it out loud, which is weird. And that fact is that technology left to its own devices degrades over time, and it is only through effort that it actually gets better. And so it's really important to point this out, that people think that science and technology improve over time, but they don't. They degrade over time, and it's only through a lot of human effort that you actually get continual incremental improvement. And that effort is communication. It's communication between people who know how to do things and people who don't, to try and spread that knowledge and keep it maintained so that new people can add to it and advance rather than having to start over and degrade, right? And it's just worth saying that because nobody ever says that, but it's 100% the case. And the institutions that are generally responsible for preserving this knowledge are bad at it. Universities are terrible at preserving knowledge, especially in technical fields. And like textbooks are horrible at it, very, very bad. So the act of actually like preserving what we do know how to do is tenuous, and this talk should hopefully provide you with some evidence that that's true, that you do need to do work to prevent backslide, but also show some examples of why we are probably in a backsliding period right now, meaning we have already entered a time when software is backsliding because of poor communication and poor training and knowledge transfer. So it's not like something that we have to be afraid will happen in the future. It's something we should be afraid is already happening now. And something probably should be done about it if we can figure out what that something would be. Unfortunately, the talk doesn't have an obvious, easy answer. I don't think that's the talk's fault. I think that's just the fact that there isn't an obvious, easy answer to something like this. It's a very complicated issue. And so it's more a talk about trying to get people to stop being so self-congratulatory and start realizing just how dangerous a situation we have found ourselves in. And maybe try to motivate people to try and work a little harder to figure out how to fix this problem that we actually have. Hopefully, it will do a good job of convincing you of that. If it doesn't, oh well. But I would really recommend giving it a listen. And it will be a lot easier for you to listen than me because hopefully now it is just English, if that makes sense. So hopefully that'll work out. Please check that out. I will be back here tomorrow when I want to go look at why we're having some bugs in why that flower hat was getting extracted as multiple bitmap regions that, though I don't think had anything in them. Maybe they did have something in them, and actually there's some noise pixels in there. Either way, we have an issue. If it's extracting grid squares that don't have anything in them, that's an obvious bug that needs fixing. If it's extracting grid squares because they actually do have something in them, well, we still have a problem, which is that needs to be articulated more clearly so that we can see what the actual error is and fix it in the art asset. So either way, we need to do something about it. We'll take a look at that a little bit later on the stream tomorrow for sure. So please come back for that, and I'll see you here tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, have fun programming, and I'll see you on the internet. I guess I should also say, as I say every time, in case you didn't know already, if you do want to work with source code directly, it is available. If you pre-order the game, it comes with the source code so you can follow it at home. That's on handmadehero.org. And of course, the schedule is always under the Watch tab, as is the searchable episode guide. If you're looking for something specific, check out that Watch tab. It's got a lot of good stuff on it. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, have fun programming, and I'll see everyone on the internet. Take it easy, everybody.